Well, being asked to upgrade for live streaming. Um, Fun intro again. Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Lunch Money. This is the only podcast where sales meets therapy, and you're with me, Scott Schnaars.
And me, Edan Gottlib. And today we're going to talk about a part of the sales process that everybody pretends is not coming their way until it does. The procurement guys.
The theme of today is really going to be around why salespeople dread working with procurement. We're going to talk about what they get wrong and how do you win procurement over without having to give away your soul. If you've done any kind of enterprise deal throughout the course of your career, procurement tends to be the final gatekeeper that you need to get through in order to get some signed final paperwork there. And they can become your best friend and they can be an advocate for you and they can make the process really easy, or they can be the exact opposite and make the procurement process really, really painful. So depending on how you look at it, we're going to try and help you get into the best friend advocate position, not the enemy painful position.
Yeah. And all of us, and you and me, Scott, specifically, we've been through it. Procurement,
Many times.
you show up to procurement and all of a sudden they don't care about all your beautiful ROI slides and the spreadsheets that you did and all the work you worked through to get to that point. They care about price, terms, risk mitigation, and they're going to put you in that corner after you did all this work to build the value proposition.
So how do you survive this and how do you win? Today, we're going to break down a survival guide on dealing with procurement. And we want to make it, we want to be really clear that there's a distinction between legal and procurement. These are two wholly different departments, but they both tend to look out for similar things. They want to get the best price and they want to mitigate risk for themselves. So today we're going to be talking all about procurement, and this is the team that actually buys stuff for their company. And I do mean stuff. This is everything from potato chips in the break room to AI chips in their server. So let's first start by really understanding their role.
Yep. I think that's a good point to start with. Really have to understand procurement, right? And I think the first order of business is let's start with empathy. You have to understand that, despite the way it feels, procurement's job is not really to make your life miserable. Their job is really to reduce risk, to manage or cut cost in first kind of a consistent method for them to go and do business. And they do it through enforcing a well thought out, well structured process in order to make sure that everything kind of falls in lines with the planning and what they need to execute against.
I love that you said that because I think that empathy is a great place to start for anything. Every procurement person I know, generally doesn't wake up in the morning thinking, how are they going to screw over a salesperson? I say most, because, you're going to get one or two that probably do, and I can think of a couple. But in general, they don't wake up thinking, how am I going to screw over salespeople? But it can feel that way because a lot of times salespeople go into these meetings very unprepared. And anybody knows really how much I love good prep going into any meeting there.
Yep. So being action oriented, action item number one, I think, for today's episode is map your procurement's KPIs, right? Before you engage with them, before you start the conversation, go ask your champion and say, okay, what does procurement care about the most here? And in details. So get from them that what's their checklist in order to get something done. And if your champion doesn't know, you can tell them how to go find that out. And if they can't go find it out, find it out yourself. Say, hey, before we engage with this, we'd like to have a chat with procurement just so we'll understand that everything that we're setting up and all the work that your company is going to invest time in to evaluate this will align with how they work things. And so take that effort to truly understand it way, way early in the process, and get to map these procurement KPIs.
And I think that these are good questions to ask in your very first meeting, is understanding what their KPIs are, or even better, understand who you're up against. Is this a legal-led procurement process, or is this a finance-led procurement process, or is it purely cost center procurement? Each one of these is a different animal, and it's going to dictate the entirety of your negotiations.
And as Scott said earlier, procurement could be your friend or could be your gatekeeper. It's up to you really where it's going to end up. They are masters of budgets and processes, and they know how to move things from side to side, where the cost centers are, and how to really maximize everything. So if you are really well aligned with them, then your life could be great. If you're not, it could be horrible.
Yeah. So, I think the first thing you want to do when you're in a deal and your champion starts talking about like, oh, okay, like let's get this over to procurement. I think one of the worst moves that a seller can make is just letting a deal fall into procurement with no plan, right? This is the classic failure to plan is planning to fail.
Yep. It's like tossing the deal into this black hole, or as one of our sales guys used to call it, the vortices of evil, and hoping a PO will emerge on the other side in some miraculous way.
If there's anybody out there that either hobbies in astrophysics or in Doctor Strange, I'd love to learn more about the vortexes of evil that Edan is talking about. But maybe like one way to avoid that vortex of evil is just pre-wire the procurement team, like really work with them. Even before you get introduced, like have your champion work with them. But before any kind of handoff, like just ask your champion, like, hey, can you set up a quick intro call or set up an email? And when you do that, you want to frame the deal with as much information as you possibly can on all of the work that has been done. Make sure that your procurement champion understands that the deal's already been well vetted, it's already been well negotiated, it's strategic to the organization, and that it's time sensitive. We have to get this done quickly. And when you start laying that out up front, you start setting expectations of what has to happen, and hopefully that makes your deal go a lot smoother through that process.
Yep. And it's sometimes just like salespeople are dreading to go to procurement, so does your champions. So bringing it up front early and engaging really becomes important. Now, bonus points. If you have your own paper that you have to go or like to do the business with, you want to show it to them. You want to show the MSA. You want to go through the details up front. Don't be reactive to what will happen later when they ask you. Lead that process. By the way, for you, it could be a really good excuse of why to engage with them early if even your champion is hesitant to make the connection. Again, sometimes because they just don't want to do it just like you didn't.
Yeah.
All right. Let's go to how do you negotiate with the procurement folks. Okay. And I think the way we kind of thought about it is like, how do you negotiate with leverage and not with fear when it comes to procurement? This is where sellers really start discounting out of sheer panic. I mean, this is panic mode for them. So repeat after me. It's never about the money. Even in procurement land, it's never about the money.
It's never about the money. I'm repeating it now.
Yes,
Everybody should be repeating that out loud as they're watching this.
It's never about the money. Yes.
But what happens is, you get put in front of a procurement person, they look at your proposal, they look at your agreement, and they go, you know what, that price won't work, and we're not going to do this deal. And the very first thing out of an average rep's mouth is, oh, well, what if we give you a 15 or 20% discount? Like they don't even think about it. It's just like this knee-jerk reaction to give a discount. And let's go back to what we talked about a few weeks ago. Knee-jerk discounts are not negotiations.
So if you look at an action item of what to do about here is, you need to use trade-offs. That's your action item. Now to do this, we talked about at the beginning about empathy, but even the broader scope, it's like you first have to understand their world. You have to understand what is important to them. You have to understand what is their priorities, what they need to do. And I have a quick little story about this. We were doing this deal where we worked through a lot. It was a big deal, and we worked with the business and created the whole business structure and plan. And really the big request for them was, since they're going to take them time to ramp up and let everybody that they want to use the system use it, probably a period of almost a year, then they didn't want to, buy stuff that they're not going to use. They didn't want to have to pay for the full capacity of the solution or the platform in year one, but only in year two. So we kind of constructed the deal that way that it ramps up and it's great. We get to procurement and the guy barfs all over it, get into panic, almost cardiac arrest, and throwing us out the office. And what we found out is that the procurement's goals are to either flat or reduce their spend year over year. And here I show up with something that's going to cost 5x in year two, which basically eliminated his bonus and probably will get him fired. So we had to rebuild and reconstruct the entire deal to be really more of a flat type of a deal with a little bit of a less spend kind of in year two. Ended up, by the way, being a bigger deal because they paid, essentially more because they needed the full capacity, but it really aligned with what the company wanted and the procurement guys call, and the deal happens. We ended up with a bigger deal just by understanding procurement. It cost us about 3.5 more months and probably half the life of the sales guy. But just, again, understand their world first before you step, even if you worked with a high-level executive who did exactly what he wanted to do and constructed it the way the business wanted. Procurement could be very different. So if they want price down, get something back. Figure out what is important for them. And it's not price. Is it prepay? Is it multi-year? Is it an easy contract to go through? You don't have to go through legal. Or is it use of the logo? Is it find everything that is in play before you go to price and have a trade-off that is valuable for them. And that story, right? We ended up with a significantly bigger deal. So it was never about price.
It's never about the money. And some of these things, you want to use a logo. Like that's a really easy one to give, but it is very valuable. Some of these things aren't necessarily in the purview of the procurement person that you're working with. And what I would recommend is like make them go do some homework. They want that discount. Like they're going to have to go do some hustle for that. But you're never negotiating just price. You're building the deal architecture, and you want to show them that you're a pro and not just a quota chaser. So you want to make sure that you're just not giving that knee-jerk 15, 20, 50, 90% discount right out of the gate. So again, repeat after us. This is never about the money.
This is never about the money. By the way, I do want to double down on your point about architecturing the deal. You're not just architecting the deal, you're architecting the relationship you're going to have with them and the critical part of the relationship of when and how you get paid. So even if you look at the multiple years and the renewal aspects, like procurement is always going to be there. And this is the point where money exchanges hands. So you really, really want to have a really great relationship and a really good architecture that fits their world and what you want. And it's never about the money. Yes.
It never is. So finally, now that you've had all of these conversations and you've verbally gone through this and you've hopefully come to some agreement on these deals, now you get into the paperwork game. And this is a part that often gets overlooked. You get into things like red lines and you get into indemnification, you get into liability caps. All of these things matter. They are certainly going to matter to your client. They should 100% matter to you and to your company.
Especially more that you're an enterprise, SaaS terms can really kill your margin, really kill your upselling, your cross-selling, your growth, or open you up to complete sets of risks that you don't want to get into. And as we mentioned earlier about this is where, you sometimes it's procurement, but you sometimes have the legal part of it, and sometimes you have a compliance, and you can have other moving parts contaminating the purity of the procurement part of it. So you want to really stay on top of it and make sure that you don't overlook anything here. This is where the details matter.
Now, one of the things that has always killed me about sales and procurement is every procurement person I know gets probably 3 to 6 weeks a year of negotiating training, legal training, deal training. They get so much training. More often than not, they are going to be so much better at this process than your average sales rep. I wish that more sales organizations would invest in their salespeople to get them to be as good as as good as a procurement person is at negotiating. It would make those negotiations a lot better for the company. But if you're not going to get that, the action item that I would give you is build a term playbook. You should know what you can flex on and where the legal draws the line. And Don and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about negotiations. You don't have to escalate every clause. You're a real seller. You need to own those clauses like a real seller. And as long as you have that term playbook, you can negotiate those things. These are business issues, not legal issues.
And I want to say something here that is kind of it's a tricky one, right? First statement will be this. Don't be afraid to walk away. If terms or the deal gets it to be really insane, don't be afraid to walk away. Flip side to that, if you're in a position that you have to walk away, means you haven't done something right before that. You shouldn't be getting to a point that you need to walk away, unless they're a completely unreasonable kind of company. But those are really hardly exist. It's if you knew what the process was, you set up. If you had your players, you know what's going on. You should not get to a place that it becomes a pivotal point that is important to them and will kill you, that you have to walk away.
Yeah, I would imagine in the thousands of deals that you and I have done over the course of a long career, I can probably count on one hand how many times I've lost deals to procurement. And they still sting. because
Yeah.
you do so much work and you get so far and then they disappear.
And I think all those that I could recall, because it's a traumatic event,
Yeah.
losing the procurement is because we haven't done the right things. It could be as simple as like my previous example. You weren't aligned with what is important to them, and you didn't even know that you're breaking them. If we didn't have that conversation with that procurement guy and get the information, we wouldn't have known that it's the flat to go down year over year, and we would just think that he's just against us and evil. And so don't be afraid to walk away because you do not take a bad deal. We do not close, high performance sales reps do not close bad deals.
Yeah.
But if you got to a place that you have to walk away, and again, not walking away for negotiation purpose or for a position or to go and walk away to come back or really have to walk away because the deal is unreasonable, that means that something you have not done right, have not done your job right before that to get to that position.
Yep.
All right.
You nailed it.
I hope so. Well, all right. So what do great sellers do kind of as a wrap up for our discussion, right? Understand the procurement role really, really, really well. You have to pre-wire them and your contract that would everything fits to what they care and what's important to them. You trade. This is what negotiation is, things going back and forth. You don't cave. You don't go for price. And you have to truly understand their constraints and what's important to them. Because if you structure it well, right, and as I mentioned, it might look very different than what the business construct was. This is your job. You have to connect the worlds for your champions so they be able to go and secure the funds and get it going.
And I think the real magic, Adon, like I'll use the word that you used at the beginning, and that's empathy. It's like a good, real professional seller treats the procurement like a partner, not like a roadblock. They don't freak out when things have to go to procurement. Like that's, kind of the championship game is happening there. So like they're excited about it and they get to work with another partner inside of the organization who oftentimes keeps you in mind and brings you into other projects in the future. Like some of the best kind of follow-up land and expand deals I've ever had was because I've had a great relationship with the procurement team and they've brought me into future things.
Yep. And as I mentioned before, they are the masters of where the money, how the money goes, where the money is, how the money flows, how to write stuff up, even line items, even what you put in which budget items. So, which means you're going to get really much better deals, much faster deals, much bigger deals, and really build the respect internally. Because as I mentioned, many of your champions are not going to like to talk to procurement either. And if you are the one that stands in the middle and kind of coordinates everything for them, you're going to have a lot of respect.
So I think a final action item on this would be to debrief with your champion after your deal closes, right? This is kind of part of the win analysis that you and your company should be doing on every deal. And just ask the question, like, what did the procurement team say about us? Did they like working with us? Were we easy to do business with? Do they have anything negative that we can adjust so that we can constantly be making ourselves better and refining that future approach there?
So I think kind of that's a wrap for today. So if you ever had a deal die in procurement, we feel for you, but it's your fault.
And if you've got some good horror stories, like share them in the comments, share them with us, and maybe like I'll even do a dramatic reading, or Adon can do a dramatic reading of your procurement horror stories in a future episode.
Oh, that'd be great. Well, until then, don't forget to play chess and not checkers.
And keep your lunch money.